Welcome back. In our last tutorial, we built some custom alphas for our Sci-Fi crate, and we're going to go ahead and apply them to the scene. So let's go ahead and do. So I'm going to press F to frame my crate. I'm going to zoom out by holding down Option or Alt if you're on a PC, and then letting go of it. I can rotate a little and press Shift to snap this into position. Maybe hold down Option and bring this down a little lower. And now I'm ready to just kind of sculpt on this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the alpha. And I'm going to, under alpha, go to import. And on my desktop is where I saved my two PSD files. So let's start with the arrow file. I'm going to press open. And now you'll see that the arrow exists in my toolbar over here. Now I had to close out of everything by accident. I didn't save my crate, rather. I didn't have to close out, but I closed out before I recorded the tutorial, and I need to go ahead and up the tessellation on this again. So I'm going to go ahead and go to geometry, and I'm just going to divide until I'm back up to like 8 million. That's probably fine. Ooh, look at all those triangles. All right, I'm going to press undo. And I'm going to go over here to my dots, and I'm going to change it to drag react. So now when I click on drag react, you can see that it creates a nice triangle. Now I'm going to press undo because one, I want this to be Z sub, and two, you'll notice that when I rotate this and I draw, it almost has like a bevel effect, like it's deeper in the middle and it tapers along the edges, and that has to do with the focal shift. I'm going to press undo, and I'm going to turn the focal shift off. I'm basically set to like -100. And now when I draw, you'll notice there's no like tapering around those edges. All right, so I'm going to rotate this a little and snap it. And I'm going to go close geometry, and I'm going to open up my subtool, and I'm going to press shift and reveal the other assets. Now I only have box selected, so even though the other stuff is showing, it shouldn't sculpt on it. And I'm going to maybe turn off my dynamic perspective. That was the letter P, or you just push the button and kind of zoom in a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a place roughly that's the middle, and just drag and draw in my triangle. There we go. Now you'll notice that the triangle only happens on one side. What if I wanted this triangle to appear on both sides? Well, I could hand draw it, or I could use something similar to symmetry inside of Maya. There's a symmetry tool inside of Zbrush as well. So I'm going to press undo. And I'm going to go up here to the transform option. And under transform, there is activate symmetry, which the hotkey of it is X. So I could just tap X alternatively. But I'm going to click on transform, click activate symmetry, and there's X, Y, and Z. So if I have X selected, you'll notice that drawing an arrow will result in another arrow being drawn on the same side. So if that is going to be the result on the x-axis, then that tells me that I want to turn off x-axis and turn on z-axis. So let's just draw an arrow, and then let's see what happened to the other side. Yep, there's the arrow, so we definitely are on the right track. So let's go ahead and press F again, bring this to center focus, and let's draw another arrow. And there we go. All done. We now have that arrow that we saw in the concept art for the crate applied to the crate. And turn on dynamic perspective again. Make sure it looks good. All right, so we're going to use that activate symmetry, and we're going to apply it to the line tool now, not just this triangle. So I'm going to go into transform, and I'm going to turn off Z, and I'm going to go over to my alpha, and I'm going to import my line. So there's my line. And when I draw my line in, there it is. That's what it looks like. Okay? And I want it to be in these upper corners, just like in my reference image. So here's my reference image right here. So as you can see, the little lines are kind of hanging out around each corner of the box. So I'm going to go over to my transform, and I'm going to activate the X, and let's see what happens when we activate the Y. So it looks like this is coming up a little high with the Y, but I like the outcome on the X. So I'm going to press undo, and I'm going to go back into transform, and I'm going to turn off Y, but I'm going to turn on Z so that whatever we do on one side of the crate is going to be mirrored to the other side. So, oops, I was trying to use spacebar. Bad habit. I've been jumping between Maya and Zbrush and Toon Boom and Photoshop, so sometimes my hotkeys get a little confused. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that line back here. Cool, looks about right. And let's do that again over here. Trying to kind of keep it similar. I'm not too worried about strict accuracy, just trying to keep it looking okay. Alright, and now let's look to the other side of our crate just to double check, and surely it is looking good. Alright, let's try this side of the crate. So if I were to start drawing a line, and I think I want to have this angled a little bit so I could see how the line, how the line looks over on this side while I'm drawing. So roughly there. Nah, not quite right. Try again. It's pretty close. Again, I'm not super worried about being perfect, just trying to get it into a proximity. Let's go down here and do the same thing. Cool, close enough. So now we've got those lines drawn in, and they're going to be duplicated on the other side. Let's go ahead and isolate just the crate. Remember, you just hold down Shift and click the eyeball. And I'm just going to draw one of those lines up here. Doesn't quite look like my reference, but it'll do. Actually see what's going on with the reference. Yeah, I probably should have altered this bevel a little bit more. It's pretty sharp, but you know, I'm not going to redo all that, so close enough. Alright, so that is just an example of how you can use Drag React to add details. Just for fun, I'm going to go in and just scratch up the crate a little bit. I don't care to go through and add all of the little details that are in the concept art. If you want to, you certainly can. You can practice using these drag reacts to create like little circle and square that are divvied in, or the little indentions that are on the bottom and top part of the crate. But I think instead what would be more fun is to maybe just scratch things up a little bit. So just so that I have something to bake, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just going to go under my alpha, and I'm going to look for something that looks like scratches. I think this looks kind of like scratches. And I'm going to see about freehanding it. Let's see what the result is. Oh, that's cool. I like it. I want to make it look like an alien got a hold of the crate, maybe. Just having some fun. Probably need to have this applied to some other parts of the crate as well. Let's see. How about that top box? Where is that box? There it is. We should scratch the box a little bit. Oops. Notice the tessellation does not look keen on that, and that's because I've not divided up the top box. So let's click on that. Only view that. If I want to see the wireframe, I can click this Shift F, draw polyform, so you can kind of see the resolution. Not great. Let's go ahead and just divide it up a little bit. Close the subtool, open the geometry, divide it a couple of times, and then we can scratch it and add a couple of scuffs to that as well. Okay, go back to subtool, bring everything back up. Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want to keep going in the tutorial, but we have some examples now of some scratches and some scuffs just to give it a little bit of character. It's a little bit odd that there's not more scratches on it, but whatever, let's just keep going. So now that I've got my crate, let's say I'm done sculpting it, I've had my fun in ZBrush, and I'm ready to kind of kick this out of ZBrush. So there's a lot of things you could do here. You could retopologize it, you could, there's a whole slew of things, but depending on what your use is. We don't have to do that. We don't have to reduce the resolution. We don't have to retopologize anything because we're never going to open up this high poly mesh in Maya. This really dense mesh, besides the fact that it would crash Maya, it's not what we're going to use it for. We're going to use it for baking. So we can just export it exactly as it is. So how do you export this out of ZBrush? Well, you're going to go up to Z plugin and you're going to look for the FBX export import. And you're going to, by default, it's usually set to select. Make sure you have all selected. Okay? And I think everything else can basically be just left alone. Now, before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and save my scene. So I'm going to go save as, and I'm going to save this as crate. So it's going to be a tool file on my desktop. That way I have something that I can always come back to if I want to. And then I'm going to go over here to Z plugin, and I'm going to go ahead and click on export. Now this is going to take a while, so I'm probably going to stop the recording, but yeah, when I click export, it's going to give this pop-up window. It's going to say, hey, it's an FBX. I'm going to name this one Z crate, or actually, I guess I could just call it crate high. And then I could rename the other crate as my original, and this one I'll just name crate high. And before I press save and let it do its thing, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.